All right, let's dive into a strategic puzzle that sounds, well, pretty much impossible. We're going to explore how Canada would, in a purely hypothetical exercise, defend itself from its closest friend and ally, the United States.
So, let's just put the main question right out there. Could Canada actually defend itself against the United States? I mean, in an all-out military conflict. It sounds like the plot of a wild movie, right? But believe it or not, the strategic planning for it is very, very real.
Okay, so why? Why even spend a minute thinking about something so unthinkable? Well, to really get the answer, you first have to appreciate just how unique and how close this relationship truly is.
I mean, we are talking about the longest undefended border on the entire planet. These two aren't just neighbors. They're some of the most deeply integrated allies and trading partners in history. That friendship is absolutely real. But, and this is a huge but, in the cold, hard world of national defense, military planners have to separate friendship from strategic reality.
And that reality starts with geography, which is a massive challenge for Canada. Just look at this. Almost the entire Canadian population, all its major cities, all its critical infrastructure, is crammed into this narrow strip within about 100 miles of the US border. That gives you basically zero strategic depth. There's no room to fall back. And that's before you even get to the Arctic. A vast, harsh, and totally unique defensive problem all on its own.
So this brings us back to the crucial point. If the whole scenario is so unlikely and the geography is such a nightmare, why bother planning for it at all? The answer, it turns out, gets to the very heart of what national security is all about.
The best way to think about it is like this. You don't buy fire insurance because you expect your house to burn down. Of course not. You buy it just in case, for that low probability, high impact disaster. Well, military contingency planning is the exact same thing. It is not a prediction of war. It's a nation's ultimate insurance policy. And hey, this isn't just our take. The strategic analysis itself makes this crystal clear. This whole thing is a hypothetical exercise. It's about testing your logic, finding your own vulnerabilities, and just making sure you're prepared. It's a sign of a responsible government, not a sign of distrust.
Okay, so let's say the truly unthinkable happens and that insurance policy has to be cashed in. What would this fight actually look like? Well, to put it mildly, it would be the absolute definition of a David versus Goliath scenario.
The difference in scale is just staggering. You look at any conventional metric you want, defense budget, number of active personnel, technological advantage, and the US is just operating on a completely different planet. A head-to-head conventional fight, for Canada, that's simply not a viable option.
No way. And the problems go way beyond just the military numbers. That deep economic connection, in a conflict, that becomes a huge vulnerability. Then you have to add in the threat of cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, the gigantic task of securing the Arctic, and protecting all that infrastructure right on the border. The picture gets incredibly complicated incredibly fast.
So, if you know you can't win a conventional fight, what do? Well, you don't play Goliath's game. You invent a new one. And this is exactly where Canada's asymmetric playbook comes in.
Asymmetric warfare. It sounds a little complicated, but the concept is really simple. It just means you don't try to match strength against strength. Instead, you use your opponent's size against them, and you lean into your own unique advantages, like your geography and your specialized skills. It is all about leverage.
And that strategy really rests on 4 key pillars. First, deterrence. Make any attack incredibly costly with strong air and coastal defenses. Second, northern depth. Turn that brutal Arctic wilderness into a natural fortress. Third, cyber and space. Fight the war on the modern battlefields of satellites and digital security. And fourth, elite forces. Don't try to build a massive army. Instead, prioritize small, highly mobile, and exceptionally trained units.
A perfect example of this idea in action is a group like the Canadian Rangers. They're a reserve force made up mostly of indigenous peoples, who are absolute masters of that northern terrain. They can operate where a huge, conventional army would just get stuck. They literally turn Canada's harshest geography into a powerful weapon.
But beyond all the clever tactics, terrain, and technology, Canada has one final card up its sleeve. And honestly, it's a card that changes the entire game. It's what makes this whole scenario politically, not just militarily, almost impossible. You know, the most important number in this entire strategic calculation isn't a budget figure or a troop count, it's this one.
The number 5, as in Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. This is the absolute cornerstone of the NATO alliance.
It states, very simply, that an armed attack against one member is considered an attack against them all. And here's the kicker. Both Canada and the United States are founding members of NATO.
So just think through the implications of that. An attack on Canada would, in theory, trigger a collective defense from every single other NATO ally. We're talking the UK, Germany, France, you name it. That diplomatic reality is the ultimate deterrent. It makes an invasion of one NATO member by another politically, well, unthinkable.
So, after walking through this whole impossible scenario, what's the real lesson? What are we actually supposed to take away from this kind of strategic exercise?
I think the key lesson is this. Planning for your own defense, even against a close friend, isn't an act of hostility or distrust. It's simply one of the most fundamental duties of a sovereign nation. It's about a government doing its job to ensure its own security and autonomy, no matter how remote a threat might seem.
And that really leaves us with a final big thought to chew on. In a world where even the most steadfast allies have to prepare for the unimaginable, what does that really tell us about the complex and maybe fragile nature of security in the world today?